Alright, so now I'm getting started on wiring up the alternator on the Jaggernaut. And if you notice here, there's more than one wire on the alternator. You normally have your big, thick battery charging wire, and you'll have another sensing wire that tells it how many volts are coming off to compare and controls your voltage regulator. But you have to have this diode and light bulb. You have to have a resistance here. The light bulb, the alternator light bulb, usually works as your resistance, and that you have to have this in order for it to charge. So I've got the alternator I'm putting on the Jaggernaut is a Mazda RX-7 alternator. I've got a bunch of them on the shelf from back when I used to play with RX-7s. And it's a 55 amp alternator. It's not big, but it's plenty for keeping the car on the racetrack. It doesn't draw a whole lot of horsepower. And it has a nice, easy little Molex connector here for connecting the fittings, the wires. And these are the wires that were in it. I depinned them, pulled them out because they don't match the colors on my wiring diagram. And I want my wiring diagram to match what's on the car so that if we have to diagnose something, we know what wire we're on. You can see maybe that that's a red and gray wire there, and this is two red wires. So I've got some red wire here. I'm going to put in one of these and put it inside that Molex. And looking at this diagram here, this tech data matters. If you have your tech data, you can see which wire's which. I'm going to the L terminal to make this here. And so that'll be that wire. So for the sensing wire, which is going to be your R terminal, I want just a straight up red wire. So that's what I'm wiring right now. All right, so I got my Molex connector finished. Here's the sensing wire. It's going to go right back up to here. This plugs in behind here, behind this bracket, so it's not going to be easy to see when it's plugged in. Oh, and I got to turn it the wrong way. There we go. But it goes right there, and this wire is going to come up here and connect with the power lead to the battery. So I'm going to get one of these ring terminals here to connect it. So my next step is going to be see what size, and yeah, it takes the smallest one here. So I'm going to strip back my wires and stick them together on there and heat shrink it. And this is my wire going back to the alternator light, but I'm going to trim this up a little bit to make it the right size. And so basically I'm going to zip tie. I'm going to run this wire and this wire side by side and zip tie them all the way back. And this little loop here is just going to exist right up here at the alternator because that's all it needs to be. And I'm going to shorten that up too so it's not hanging all over the place. I want to have a little bit of play in it, but I don't have a ton, so I'm probably going to cut it back to right about there. And I'll crimp these together and get the connector done, and then I'll have this ready to run back in the car. And you can see I don't have this cut yet. I don't have the fuse box in the car yet. I don't know exactly how that's going to go, so I don't have it done, but I'm leaving it bundled up until I get to that point. I'm getting a little extra lead there on this than I normally would for a connector. And I'm going to cut this back a little bit further. I want a little bit longer run so these two wires can twist together a little bit. There we go. They're not going to twist together a whole lot, but I want them to wrap around each other at least a little bit. If you notice, I rotated that as I put it on so they would help wrap those wires around each other. Get my fingers right. I'm choked back a little bit on it, and now I'm going to choke towards the front. Squish it real good in the middle. Okay, those are secure. They're not coming loose. I got those heat shrunk together. And so that looks like that's going to fit real nice. And now I'm going to get a zip tie, and I'm going to zip tie this so these wires stick together. I highly recommend one of these zip tie guns. It'll pull your zip ties tight and nip off the ends for you all in one go. You don't want to leave your zip tie ends loose. And you also don't want them so sharp that they'll cut you. This gives you nice flush ends. I've seen wiring jobs and wiring harnesses where people just left the wires in a mess without zip tying them. And it gets sloppy. It gets in the way. You can catch stuff on it, rip wires. Make your wiring neat and tidy. Get it tied down as nice and neat as you can. I've got some Adele clamps, and I'll probably run one or two along here to hold the wiring down to the valve cover. But there you go. That's the wiring. That's the alternator into the wiring. Now I just got to run it inside and wire it up inside. But I'm not going to tie this stuff down yet because there's a coolant temp sensor up here that needs a wire, and I'm going to run it up and join it to this harness. I have my distributor wiring come here to this harness, and it's all going to run out that way. And I do have some sheathing. I should get here tomorrow, and I'll sheathe the harness up to here to keep everything nice and neat and tidy.